Welcome back to the Morning Line. We teased just before the break that we have a very special guest with us, and that we do. Hall of Fame hockey player Eddie Olczyk, former head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and also an avid horse racing fan, I hear. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, good morning, Brittany, Matt. Nice to be with you, and thank you very much for having me.
You do the game last night yourself, Doc Emmerich, Pierre Maguire, Game 7, the Garden, Rangers, Caps, over. And first of all, you got to be exhausted because that game.
That's what coffee's for.
The best thing about living on the West Coast is that sporting events on the East Coast that end at 11:30, they end at 8:30 for me. You have to get up real early the following morning. What a game last night! How fun is it to broadcast a game like that? And tremendous work.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Matt. As you know, I mean, whether it's around the Triple Crown time or Breeders' Cup time, I mean, that's what the Stanley Cup playoffs are. I mean, every shift matters, every period matters, and when you have two teams that played even all the way through in the Washington Capitals and New York Rangers, and to see them get to overtime, I mean, that's just epic stuff. And considering where the Rangers had come from, being down 3-1 in the series, so you know, lucky enough and privileged enough to have played in the National Hockey League for 16 years and won a Stanley Cup in New York in 1994. To see, you know, the excitement and the energy inside that building certainly brought back a lot of selfish memories for sure. But, I mean, anytime you can get to playoff hockey and have sudden death, sudden win, whatever the verbiage you want to use, it doesn't get any better than that. Now we're down to the Final Four, which is pretty incredible, and now you're going to have two great series. The Ducks will be hosting the Blackhawks, and then the Rangers will be hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Now, Eddie, I have to ask, because you were just mentioning it before, you've played for the New York Rangers, you won the Stanley Cup with them, you were covering the game last night. I mean, do you find that your heartstrings get a little bit pulled for that team that you used to play for? I know you have to keep it unbiased, but do you find yourself getting involved?
Well, you know what? I was known as a suitcase when I played for my 16 years in the NHL because I wore out my welcome every 3+ years. So going from my hometown team in Chicago, where I played my first game, my 1000th game in the NHL, and my last game, certainly I'm very proud of to have been a Chicago guy and got a chance to play for the Blackhawks. But I played in some great places. I mean, I played in Toronto. I played in Winnipeg. I played in Pittsburgh. I had a cup of coffee with the LA Kings in '96.
You were the Willie Loman of the league, weren't you?
Yeah, well, you know what? My wife is still with me after 26 years, so I must have done something right. And then,
wow,
of course,
congratulations. Yes, you must have.
The stop with the Rangers. So, you know, I'm always going to be associated with certain teams, and being a Chicago guy is probably where my ties are the most. But, you know, you like to see people do well, and you like to see entertaining hockey, but I'm just doing my job, and whatever I see, I'm going to speak my mind.
Eddie, I'm going to butter you up here first, but I'm a little angry with you, to be honest with you. I'm going to butter you up by telling our viewers that don't know much about your career. You mentioned you broke in '84, you played till 2000, 342 goals, 452 assists in 1,031 games. You had a tremendous career. You coached in the league. I honestly think you're part of the best broadcasting team in all of sports, really, with yourself and Doc Emmerich, who's the best play-by-play guy in any sport, and Pierre does a great job on the ice. Here's the issue I have with you. I'm a Minnesota Wild guy. Our good friend Jim Miller is a Chicago Blackhawk guy. So we went to you before the Blackhawk Wild series. You kind of brokered this agreement that Jim and I made where if the Wild were to win the series, Jim Miller on air would have to wear a Zach Parise jersey. And if the Blackhawks were to win, which of course they did in 4 games, I would have to wear a number 88 Patrick Kane
jersey. The proof is in the pudding.
And here is that conversation. Better make sure, my wife is okay with this one in terms of having to wear the Patrick Kane jersey because she's a diehard Detroit Red Wing fan, and they hate the Blackhawks, obviously, one of the biggest rivalries in all of sports. So, you know, Jimmy's been kind enough to go double or nothing with me, and I think I got the Ducks against the Blackhawks now.
Wow, double or nothing.
Double or nothing. Very, very sporting of one Jim Miller. And
so I guess I'm out of the deal now. I guess I was the deal maker, and now I'm out.
You just set me up, though. You knew my Wild had no chance. You're an expert. You played in the league forever. You're the best analyst in all of hockey. You do the Blackhawks games when you're not working for NBC.
Hold on a second, Maddie. Hold on. The Minnesota Wild just come off of taking care of one of the better teams in the National Hockey League in the St. Louis Blues, and then all of a sudden,
what happened to us?
You know what? I'm surprised at how dry they went offensively. I mean, you know, you can have the best defense, you can have the best system. I think Mike Yeo, the coach of the Wild, did a terrific job, but they just went dry offensively, and you can't do that against the Blackhawks. You just can't. You can't play that way.
Quickly, Eddie, we're showing a picture of you. What's it like working with Doc?
Well, I mean, he's the best. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work with him and Pat Foley in the games I do in Chicago. But when you listen to Doc Emrick, I mean, you hear Doc Emrick. I mean, he paints a picture. I mean, you could sit there and just know exactly what's going on. I mean, the passion, the love for the game, and it's an intimidating chair to sit in. Let me just tell you that. I mean, so you better bring your game each and every night. And I'm just real proud to sit next to him each and every game. And I think we do a great job on our NBC broadcast.
All right, Britney mentioned that you won the Stanley Cup with the Rangers in '94 with Messier. And I think we got a photo here. Gopher Gin won the Derby that year, and there is a strapping young Nick Zito along with you. And so again, what
is in the Stanley Cup?
What's the deal? Each player gets to have the cup for what's the length of time?
A couple of days. Yeah, a couple of days. First off, let me just say this. I'm not sure about the shirt choice on a younger Eddie Olczyk back in the day, but
mustard?
That
nice.
Picture, hey, Maddie, that picture, Britney, that picture there is one of the most proud pictures I have in my office at home. I mean, to be able to have won a Stanley Cup, one of the greatest trophies in all of sports, and then to get a chance to meet Nick Zito and his son Alex, and get a chance to take a picture with the Kentucky Derby winner. I mean, it was just a great moment and something I'll never forget. But the real deal is we put a few oats and carrots inside the top of the Stanley Cup. There have been worse things than top of the Stanley Cup.
So there's no booze in there for Gopher Gin?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, we could talk.
I actually took a photo with the Stanley Cup once.
What? You did?
Yeah, our horse Betty's Bambino, and they were traveling the Stanley Cup travel. So it was at Santa Anita, and we won a stake race, and it was there. We got to take a photo with it.
How did the hot commodity? I think Daryl Sutter, the head coach of the Kings, was out there.
Yes,
Tommy Quigley had been out there, and
it was a good time for LA.
So great to share the People's Trophy for sure.
Eddie, you're making up for that shirt with a great jacket in the winner's circle we're looking at here with 8-foot Jim Miller in the background.
Yeah.
How did you get into racing? Where did that start from?
Well, I mean, growing up in Chicago and going to old Arlington Park, Matt, I just fell in love with the game as a 14 or 15-year-old. And, I was working hockey camps and working at the batting cages and doing a little caddying. And, that's the only money that I really had. And then I turned pro in 1984. And, Denny Savard is a very close friend. And
he owns horses.
Guy.
Yeah,
he's part owner of Private Zone that's going to be running on Belmont Day, and ran a huge race at Churchill on Derby Day. So, it just kind of started there. And as I got a little bit older and started learning about the ownership part of it, I've owned horses everywhere from up in Woodbine to Florida, out in California.
Okay.
It's just been a passion of mine. It's been a release my whole life, and I really believe that the two games are very, very similar in a lot of ways.
And Joe Quenneville owns horses, too, the Blackhawks head coach.
Yeah, he likes to play, and he's got part ownership in Bob Baffert's Midnight Hawk with Hillendale and Mike Tice as well, former head coach of the
Vikings.
Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and Bears and Vikings,
Eddie, I love your quote. You said nothing better than hockey and horses, pucks and ponies. So we're just a few days away from the Preakness here, and obviously you are in Baltimore currently. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, getting ready for our NBC coverage tomorrow and Saturday.
So we have to ask, who do you like going into this race? Are you going to go American Fair, or are you
3 hours of
away?
sleep. He was doing Game 7 of the Rangers Capitals at midnight last night at the East Coast. Have you had time to really look at this field? Obviously, you know most of these horses and the top 3 coming out of the Derby.
Yeah, well, I think it all depends on how this track is playing, Brittany and Matt, the next couple of days. And there's a chance of some precip in the air. So, how will that, affect what's going on Saturday? To me, if the race was going today, I would probably, I picked Dortmund in the Derby, and I would probably go back to him just for the fact of I think where he was on the track, and Matt, you can, you know better than anybody. I just kind of thought where he was on the track the last quarter of a mile or so, I thought that was probably the deeper part of the track as the day went on, and I just think he ran a better third than maybe people are giving him credit for. Because if you look at the big races that were on the dirt that day, the majority of the horses were probably in the 2.5 to 5 path that won the races on that day, and I just think that he was, maybe running uphill when other horses were on the conveyor belt. So I'm going to give him a shot, shorter race, but let's see how the track's playing and see if there's any rain in the forecast for Saturday.
I'll ask you the same question Brittany asked me 15 minutes ago, and I think it's maybe a small factor, but I don't think it's a huge story. The inside draw for American Pharoah. Your take on Baffert's horses breaking right next to one another with American Pharoah instead of that outside draw getting the rail in the Preakness?
Yeah. Well, I'd rather be in the two posts like Dortmund than American Pharoah. I think because I think Dortmund is gonna set the pace again. I mean, that's just kind of what I think. So can American Pharoah, and if you don't mind, he can stick handle his way and get some good positioning around the first turn. That could end up being the difference in the race. But I would probably think they would rather not be down there and have more options, maybe like Firing Line sitting on the way outside.
Speaking of Firing Line, this horse has been the most intriguing and a little bit of an underdog, I would probably say. Gets an outside post. I hear Gary Stevens is absolutely boiling over with happiness. Do you think the Firing Line could turn the tables on American Pharoah?
I do. Britney, I thought Gary rode rode a terrific race in the Derby.
Ride.
I mean, he really did. I mean, he wasn't going to let Dortmund get too far, and I mean, it ended up being one of those. I mean, almost was like a harness race, where it was just a merry-go-round for the longest period of time, and Gary wasn't going to let Dortmund get brave and get too far ahead. So I think that's a perfect draw for sure. But again, I mean, the biggest question mark, and just talking to a lot of hockey people that don't know a lot about horse racing, and I'm still learning every day, is that the quick turnaround for these horses. I mean, and that's the unknown. We can all project and get a good feel and hear what the trainers are saying, but until you actually see them and watch the race, you don't know how they're going to respond in such a short period of time, and that ends up being the difference between winning and losing if a horse just doesn't have it on that particular day.
Eddie, was the first telecast you did in terms of horse racing for NBC, was it the San Anita Handicap the year before last, where you had there was 12 races that or 7 races you talked about, you picked 7 winners or something, and $40 horses and stuff. Was that your first? That was your first telecast, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, last year, yeah. I mean, it was out at Santa Anita. It was on Gold Cup Day.
Gold Cup Day, right? Gold Cup Day.
Yeah, Majestic Harbor, and She's
right.
a Smoke Show.
For Sean McCarthy.
Those were the first two.
She's a Smoke Show.
Those were the first two. Yeah. So
that's my dad's horse.
I guess that's the way to start. Pick a 10 to 1 shot, and then pick 15 to 1 shot in a 7-horse field. But hey, you know what? You know how it is. If I could just bat 300 for the week, the weekend, I'd be really happy. But just the opportunity to do it, and I mean, I've been doing it my whole life, and I respect the game so much, and I've always tried to be a so-called spokesperson for the game, because I believe in the game. I believe in the people, both the ownership and in the game itself. And look, I've said this as of late, Matt and Brittany, is that you see how big fantasy sports has gotten in our country. I mean, it's gotten so big, and it's daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and I'm sitting here going, well, isn't that what horse racing is? Is that I'm going up against my buddies. I'm going up against somebody that's sitting at the Red Rock Resort Casino in Las Vegas. I mean, we're doing the same thing. You're putting your money into a pool, and I think the biggest misconception of people that I deal with or talk to is that they think you're playing against the track, and that's the farthest from it. And I'd like to see horse racing do a better job of really explaining and teaching it and telling people, hey, this is fantasy sports right here. It's the same thing. It's just that happens to be when you're concentrating on animals instead of human beings.
Have you noticed that a lot of athletes like yourself, it seems like more now than the way it used to be, have gotten in to horse racing? I mean, now, Drew Brees, you'll see at the racetrack, Wes Welker. God, we're showing a very intense photo of you as a head coach, I believe. Yeah, Rashard Lewis, yourself.
I'd love to see how intense he gets when he's rooting on one of his horses.
Our very own Paul LaDuca played baseball, too.
Yeah, so I know. I got great respect for Paulie, and when I grow up, I want to be like him someday.
But have you noticed that? You try to tell your people in sports, say, hey, you got to give horse racing a shot. You guys like to go to Vegas. You should go to the racetrack. You actually have a chance to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I try to do that, and any time I get an opportunity to take people out to the track. I mean, like I said, with all my travels and all the places I've been, I've always tried to, just to be out there and try to teach and show people the game. And I think a lot of it, Matt, is, I mean, hockey and horse racing are fighting a lot of the same battles. I mean, I really believe that, and I think that when you can take people there in person, I think they'll be hooked. I think that they will want to learn and want to be a part of it. I mean, hockey's an intimidating game on television, but when you watch it in person, I always tell people, look, if you can have the choice, if you have the chance to either go in person or on TV, please go check it out on TV or in person, because I guarantee you that you will fall in love with it, and then you'll watch it on television. And I think horse racing and the game of horse racing is exactly the same.
All right, Eddie, we're going to let you go here in just a moment. This is a question for like the pure hockey fan out there. I think knows this individual. I grew up. I wasn't a huge hockey fan as a kid, but I grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So obviously, I loved the North Stars. Back in the day, Lou Nanne, Bobby Smith, Neil Broughton, Dino Ciccarelli, Gilles Malache. Did not like the Blackhawks too much. And my least, I think you might have played with my least favorite player. He was Al Secord, who was a great player. He scored 54 goals in 82-83. And I read this. He's the only player in NHL history to have 40 goals in a season and also have over 300 minutes in penalties. The same. What was Al Secord like? Because as a little kid in Minneapolis, not a big fan of Al's.
Yeah, well, let me just say this first, Matt. Full disclosure is that if you happen to be taking an airplane anytime soon, just make sure that Captain Al Secord is not piloting your plane. Okay?
Really?
Just remember that. Yeah, he's a commercial pilot. So just
wow.
remember that. So.
How cool is that?
What
I think
airline?
he's going to have the manifest in his briefcase, just making sure a young Matt Carothers is not on his flight.
That's hilarious. He went from, he's a guy with the worst temper in the NHL, and now he's the most even keeled. He has to be the most even keeled for that profession to be a pilot of any profession out there. That's hilarious.
No, look, I mean, a tough guy for sure. I mean, you talk about a throwback. I mean, he certainly was one of those guys that could score and also, drop the gloves. And if you wanted to dance, he can certainly do that. And I tried to align myself with those guys. I always tried to make sure that I was friends with those guys, because those guys would always take care of the younger guys and take care of the skilled guys. So
I feel terrible saying this, but I think
Blackhawk for sure.
I mean, one of my favorite parts of hockey games is when they get into a straight-out brawl. I mean, I don't know why. It's the excitement of it.
Well, anyway,
Brittany, a lot of women like yourself seem to like that part of the game of hockey.
What is that?
And Eddie, I mean, when me and you were younger, some of the, they'd have to wear helmets. I don't know when that rule went into effect, but there was a grandfather clause, and some of the older guys, when I was a kid, could skate around without helmets.
Yeah, can you imagine a day though, Matt, when goaltenders did not wear masks?
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's
really
insane.
That doesn't.
All right, we're gonna let you go. Who wins? First of all, who wins the Stanley Cup? There's 4 teams left: Anaheim, Chicago in the West, Tampa, and the Rangers in the East. And I think you travel like to 100 cities over the next week or something. You're in Baltimore, then you're in Tampa, then you're in New York. Who wins? Who gets the Stanley Cup? And then again, who wins the Preakness?
Matt, you know what? I'm going to stay well away from picking a Stanley Cup winner, because my picks so far, or at least I shouldn't say my picks, because I always kind of give an edge to a certain team, have been okay. I'd rather tell you about who I like in the 5th race tomorrow at Churchill or something than try
Please
to
do.
pick.
We'll happily take horse racing picks any day.
Yeah, no, but I think really, if you're an average hockey fan or a casual fan, I would entice you and ask you to tune in and watch these games. I mean, I think the series between the Blackhawks and Ducks is going to be a long, hard-fought series, and I think the same with the Rangers and Lightning. So, whoever gets there, it's going to be a great final. I'm looking forward to being a part of it, and looking forward to being a part of the NBC coverage this weekend for Black Eyed Susan Day tomorrow, and then of course the Preakness on Saturday.
Well, Eddie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on air. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a great ambassador for the sport, and enjoy Preakness Day.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan. You guys do a wonderful job, and I really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.